let's talk about some news. And I want to start with Dave Chappelle because, I was talking about the Alec Baldwin incident earlier. I believe new information has emerged showing that Alec Baldwin is potentially criminally responsible for this. And I'm not trying to make this a segment about Alec Baldwin, but I want to explain. This is a guy who is the producer in a movie, who knew there had been a negligent discharge multiple times, was then handed a weapon, did not check it, even though he's been trained for decades, pointed it at the crew, pulled the trigger, killing a woman. And you see all these people on the left saying he's not at fault, it was an accident. There was a post on Reddit where they were like, if you think that a guy who accidentally shot someone should go to jail, but the president shouldn't, Donald Trump, then they're like, something's wrong with you. And I'm like, let me just say it one more time. Alec Baldwin was a producer on the movie. There had been 2 separate negligent discharges the crew knew about. Some crew had walked off the set. He has been trained in how to handle the firearms on different movies, and he didn't, which means there's got to be a criminal investigation into what he knew and what he didn't. Now, I bring that up because it's purely cultural. The politics don't matter. Well, Alec Baldwin is an activist, right? So everyone's like, oh, Alec Baldwin, we got to protect him. That's really what it's about. So when I see the story with Dave Chappelle, now to segue into why the Dave Chappelle story matters, I actually was saying in the past week or so with this whole Dave Chappelle Netflix thing, you get the Netflix employees coming out, physically attacking a guy, claiming that after they destroy his sign, claim it's now a weapon. Then the media reports that the guy was actually the one attacking them. Culture is everything. And they've got the media, they've got cultural institutions. But Dave Chappelle did something funny. Variety says Dave Chappelle willing to discuss the closer with trans community, but says he's not bending to anybody's demands. This is not true. Dave Chappelle actually says members of the LGBTQ plus and trans community were supportive of him. These are the activists. These are the wingnut activists, the political actors, not people who are simply LGBTQ. And he said, quote, I want everyone in this audience to know that even though the media frames it, that it's me versus that community, that is not what it is. Do not blame the LGBTQ community for any of this crap. This has nothing to do with them. It's about corporate interests and what I can say and what I cannot say. For the record, and I need you to know this, everyone I know from that community has been loving and supporting, so I don't know what all this nonsense is about. He said, I believe Chappelle also spoke about the upcoming documentary. This film that I made was invited to every film festival in the United States, and some of those invitations I accepted. When this controversy came out about the closer, they began disinviting me from these film festivals. And now today, not a film company, not a movie studio, not a film festival, nobody will touch this film. Thank God for Ted Sarandos and Netflix. He's the only one that didn't cancel me yet. Wow. This is important context people did not realize. That Dave Chappelle has been canceled across the board, but he's standing defiant. They go on to say, though Chappelle said he was willing to meet with some members of the trans community or the activist community. See how they try to do that with Variety? They try to make these extremists the entirety of the trans community. I'm pretty sure Blair White's a member of that community. We had a fan at the event Saturday who was trans. This is not fair. He says he jokingly listed off a slew of conditions that would have to be met. Quote, to the transgender community, I am more than willing to give you an audience, but you will not summon me. I'm not bending to anybody's demands. And if you want to meet with me, I'd be more than willing to, but I have some conditions. First of all, you cannot come if you have not watched my special from beginning to end.
Nice.
You must come to a place of my choosing at a time of my choosing. And thirdly, you must admit that Hannah Gadsby is not funny. There it was.
Brilliant. Smart. I loved it. And that was the perfect response we needed right now. There's a huge conflict happening. And we also have to understand that this is not just Dave Chappelle shooting shots for no reason. This Hannah Gadsby attacked Dave and the CEO of Netflix before. The CEO of Netflix came out in response to a lot of this controversy by saying, quote, so we have Sex Education, Orange is the New Black, Control Z, Hannah Gadsby, and Dave Chappelle all on Netflix. Key to this is increasing diversity on the content team itself. Now, that's a simple response saying, hey, everyone here gets a voice on this platform, on this very important platform. And Hannah responded on Instagram by saying, quote, Ted, just a quick note to let you know that I would prefer if you didn't drag my name into your mess. Now I have to deal with even more of the hate and anger that Dave Chappelle's fans like to unleash on me every time Dave gets $20 million to process his emotions, stunned partial world views. And then later she adds, you didn't pay me nearly enough to deal with this with the real-world consequences of the hate speech whistling you refuse to acknowledge. F you, Ted, and your amoral algorithm cult. So those are very big words by her.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of people are angry at Gatsby for continuing to market what she does as comedy. I mean, that would induce some kind of hateful response in me if I was told this was going to be funny, and I watched what she did. But you made a really excellent point there, though, about how they keep trying to say that this activist fringe represents this wide swath of people. I saw Andrew Sullivan speak just a couple of weeks ago, and he made this point where he said, it's been crazy. I'm a gay man. My historical civil rights struggle and whatever else there is about my identity is not the same as a lesbian. It's not the same as a bisexual. It's not the same as a transsexual. And with Q, they're just including every white woman with blue hair. Right. It's absolutely insane that somehow you can claim to speak for so many people and everyone just accept that as a fact.
I'll say this. I'll take credit for being at least somewhat right in this regard, because I was saying when this was starting, I think Dave Chappelle's going to lose this one. I tweeted, LOL, they're trying to cancel Dave Chappelle, and I said, actually, I think it might work. To hear Dave come out and say that he's being disinvited from film festivals and no one will touch this film anymore, they got him.
I think you're right.
You're talking about The Closer?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. He's talking about The Closer.
The Closer. We
Well,
should put it on
I'm assuming it's The Closer.
Timcast.com, man.
No, Netflix owns it. It's licensed.
Right, yeah.
But he's saying, he says, the film I made was invited to every film festival in the U.S. When the controversy came out, he got disinvited from all of these film festivals. It was only Netflix that were willing to take him.
I think this only happened because he opened up that possibility by ending the comedy special seriously. And I think if he would have laughed it off, I think it would have been like sticks and stones. That's just my own personal opinion on this matter. But again, as you see, Hannah Gatsby responds very seriously. The best way to disarm someone who's too serious and taking themselves way too seriously is to laugh at them. So this was the perfect response to Hannah. And a lot of people are laughing about this. A lot of people are talking about this. This is something that could go either way, but the shots were fired back by Dave. It was good to see those shots fired.
So I also want to say, I think people make a mistake in thinking that this is somehow about the audience. I mean, this is really about what's going on internally at all of these entertainment companies. A couple months back, I did a story on digital advertising and how there are all these boycotts against, right-leaning media and stuff like that. And the guy, I talked to an advertising exec, and he made this point, explicitly. He said, it used to be when this stuff first started happening, you could go to the company and you'd say, look, this is just a social media fracas. It's going to blow over in 48 hours. You've got nothing to worry about. Now it's totally different. The culture has penetrated these companies. So what you got to worry about is Sarandos at Netflix or whatever, dealing with his, top 10 of his top executives coming to him saying, I'm not going to work at this company if you continue to act this way because they're all woke. That's
fire them.
Yeah.
They got to fire these people.
Well, they also have to deal with the ESG and a lot of the big banks and a lot of the big institutions that are pushing pressure on them. So it's not just Netflix and the employees there. I mean, and even with that protest, did you see how the media hyped it up? 1,000 people are going to come out.
That was not 1,000.
Maybe a few dozen. Let's be honest here.
I think that was actually fair. So I saw the criticism that there was one source that said, we estimate 1,000 people will come. The media ran it, and then everyone picked the story up. But as you know, Luke, whenever you see a social media post saying come to this event and there are invites given out on Facebook, when it says 1,000, we always would be like, that means 100.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you get 10 times as many people saying they will go and a 10th show up.
But this is also important to bring up because they had the mainstream media hyping this up. So people were hearing about this. People knew about this far and wide. They were doing the PR. Yeah, exactly. When you compare that, we also have to understand that on the bigger backdrop of it, that they got a lot of promotion for this. And if you have that much promotion, you would expect a bigger protest from my own personal perspective.
But again, that just proves what I was saying. This is not about what audiences want out of comedy. This is about the imperatives of corporations. That's what this is about.
I think that, Dave Chappelle it's like a grandfathering in kind of thing where when Dave Chappelle's career ends, when he gets old and moves on, we will never see a Dave Chappelle for this new time period. So I'll put it this way. Assuming that, you know what? Let me slow down. Michael Malice likes to say, these people are so dumb. How could you possibly think we're going to lose? And I'm like, dude, zombies are dumb too.
A lot.
But a lot of them overwhelm the system, and then people are running, at least in movies. If Dave Chappelle is saying that festivals are canceling him, and he's the king, Joe Rogan said he's possibly the funniest guy, the funniest comedian on the planet, then what does that mean for where we're headed? So what happens now is, I was actually thinking that Dave Chappelle might survive this. He might survive the cancellation to a certain degree. And then what would happen is they would just be like, let him age out. Once he's no longer in media or relevant, we just don't let the next generation do it. So there was that guy, Shane, what's his name? The guy from SNL who was like, he got fired.
Oh, yeah, I don't remember his last name.
Gillis.
Shane
Shane McGillis? Or
I think it's Shane Gillis.
Shane
Let me
Gillis?
double check that.
So this is a really good example. Shane Gillis did an Asian accent stereotype. You remember the story?
Yeah, I do.
And then he got fired. Chappelle on Netflix did the same, did a even more egregious where he like made the face and everything, and it was celebrated. They cheered for it. They even gave him another special at $20+ million. So for a while I thought, okay, they're gonna not let any of the new guys, any new people with this kind of humor, edgy humor, get jobs, and they'll tolerate the old comedians until they're finally gone. Now it's like they're even nuking Chappelle now. So I don't want to be. I think people need to realize, if the story ended there, fine. I guess you'd call that pessimistic, but I'm not saying the story ends there. I'm saying we're doing stuff. We had an event with Ryan Long. I can't say what Ryan Long said.
That's hilarious.
He's awesome.
But it was insane. Everyone was like, Ryan Long is an amazing comedian. And then he was like, I can't spoil any of the jokes, but it was extremely offensive. You had people going like, oh man, but it was hilarious. And you're not going to find that on Netflix.
No, you're not going to find that. But I do think things are happening. Like Václav Havel in Czechoslovakia, he wrote this famous essay where he talked about the creation of a parallel polis, meaning that, when you live in a culture that is so, dominated by lies, that it's necessary for the people that don't want to live by those lies to like create their own institutions and their own culture and live by that. Now, the crazy thing about this, what's happening is they're foisting all this stuff on us from the top down, right? But at the same time, we're not communist Czechoslovakia. Maybe, it's not dark yet. It's getting there, but we still live in a culture where we can build our own institutions. We can do new things like, this show, for instance. We can build up a parallel polis. And maybe if we do enough of that, then we can supplant this sort of, dominant ideology.
Yeah, definitely. Especially with the way psychedelics break people out of that crap. I think and they're like in DC now, they've decriminalized psilocybin, I think pretty much Washington State. Like that will shatter this nonsense.
Maybe. There's a lot of people who live in this matrix, But I want to say something. I want to say I was enlightened today when my name was trending on Twitter.
Oh.
And it was also trending alongside Noam Chomsky. Oh. For one reason. Dune, the new movie.
You saw it?
I saw half of it because we walked out of the theater. I will say this, and I'm trying to be offensive, so get ready to be offended, Dune fans. The only people who like Dune are the originalists who are fans of the book. They understand what they're watching, and they're amazed and inspired by the cinematography, the art. It was beautiful. The music was amazing and incredible. And robots that were made to be on the internet to prop up the movie and try and help sell it. But I genuinely think they're trying to, we talked about this after we walked out. I think they're trying to tank the movie because they released it for free on HBO Max, and the theater was empty. But I was going to say, I'm trending on Twitter, and I'm like, this is why there's going to be a civil war. Not seriously about Dune, but we walked into the theater. I said the movie was too slow. There was no story in the hour we watched. It was confusing and nothing was happening. To the hardcore Dune fans, they totally understood it. We walked out. But to see the amount of hate that was generated by this, and a ton of the tweets were basically like, they were political. The leftist Dune fans were attacking me over politics for me saying I didn't enjoy a movie. And I'm like, we are absolutely effed if we're like at a point where these leftists are all sharing my tweet. My name was trending because leftists were quoting me and sharing it around. I had high profile YouTubers on the left. That was their big attack. That was it. Not a policy position, because what do I tweet about where they're going to be like, this is something I disagree with? I look at things like that, which in turn, like the Alec Baldwin thing. That's why I think culture is the most important thing. Otherwise, or I should say, what's happening is that there are people like Noam Chomsky, and we'll start talking about Noam Chomsky in a minute, who think that they own all culture, the entire country, and that they are the dominant force with supreme power. And then there are people who realize that's not true, and these people are moral absolutists and authoritarians. But I wonder, if any of those people will realize that they don't have the majorities they think they do.
I think sometimes we might be too hard on ourselves, and I think we should celebrate some victories, especially when it comes to alternatives, whether it's this show, Rogan, and others. We have to understand, even with all the odds against us, even with the algorithms, even with the demonetizations, the down rankings, and the controlling of the algorithms, still our voices are heard, and I think that's a victory in itself. But even if they do cancel Dave at these festivals are missing out on a real discussion that people really want to have about these issues, that is honest, that isn't censored, that isn't squeegee cleaned, that isn't people lecturing them about what they think is right. So I think these voices will always be heard in one way or another, and it's a good thing.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to watch live, you can check out this channel Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Now, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and if you want more unfiltered and uncensored content with all of these guests, go to timcast.com and become a member. All of these guests you know and love in exclusive segments on our website where we are unrestricted in what we talk about, so you'll definitely not want to miss it. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all next time.